Bonsoir et bienvenue à tous pour ce deuxième webinaire de référence organisé par l'autre atelier. La ville invitée de ce soir est Oslo. En tant que coordinatrice de l'autre atelier, je souhaite la bienvenue à tous au nom de 13 initiatives citoyennes, BRAL, Heroes for Zero et Filter Café Filtré. Ces trois organisations œuvrent pour l'amélioration de la sécurité routière à Bruxelles. Elles se sont réunies pour mettre en place l'autre atelier, une série d'événements. Le mouvement citoyen veut placer la sécurité routière dans un contexte plus large. Il explore, approfondit et présente cette ambition à travers des parcours, des conférences benchmark et d'un atelier de conception. Tout cela contribuera au nouveau plan d'action pour la sécurité routière 2021-2030 bruxelloise. Ces événements auront lieu en même temps que les États généraux de la sécurité routière de la région de Bruxelles-Capitale. Goedenavond iedereen op deze tweede benchmarkavond, georganiseerd door het andere atelier. Als coördinator van het andere atelier heet ik iedereen welkom in naam van Heroes for Zero, BRAL en Filter Café Filtré atelier. Deze drie organisaties hebben voor het andere atelier de handen in elkaar geslagen om samen evenementen te organiseren om het actieplan verkeersveiligheid te verdiepen, te verbreden en te verbeelden. Deze evenementen vinden plaats parallel aan de Staten-Generaal voor Verkeersveiligheid van het Brussels hoofdstedelijk gewest. Onze gastavond van vanavond is Oslo. Eda Kongsrud van Oslo zal ons meteen te woord staan. Ze zal haar presentatie in het Engels geven. Dus ik stel voor dat we verder gaan in het Engels. Welkom, Eda. On behalf of BRAL, Filter Café Filtré Atelier and Heroes for Zero, I welcome you to this webinar. Thank you for telling us more about the ambition in Project Vision Zero in Oslo. I give the floor to our moderator, Tim Kassiers from BRAL, who will introduce you, as well as the four people from Brussels, who will reflect with us after your presentation on your story and what we can take into the context of Brussels. Please, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Marlies. Et merci à vous tous et toutes d'être là avec nous ce soir. Welkom aan iedereen die ons vanavond volgt via Facebook of YouTube. We are indeed honored to have here with us tonight in this virtual room Ida Kongsrud. Ida works for the Agency of Urban Environment in the city of Oslo, and since August, where she's the head of road safety section at the traffic department. Oslo has been a leading example on road safety, so we are very eager to hear her talk. But before that, let me talk you through the program of this evening. After the lecture of Ida, of about half an hour, we will give the floor to some Brussels experts who will comment and reflect upon the example of Oslo. I will introduce them shortly to you. Boussauw is Professor Spatial Planning and Mobility at VUB Cosmopolis Research Group. Jesse Pappers works for the MOBI Research Group at VUB, doing a PhD in the field of sustainable and urban mobility. Roel de Kleen works as an expert on road safety at the VZW Parents of Injured Children Association. And finally, Hanne Mangelschots is an architect and project manager at Architecture Workroom, Brussels. Besides that, Hanne puts her shoulders under Filter Café Filtré Atelier. Na hun reactie en vragen willen we ook jullie horen, ons publiek. Ook virtueel willen we jullie, de dagelijkse experten van de Brusselse mobiliteit, de kans geven om tussen te komen met vragen en opmerkingen. Op twee manieren. Het meest eenvoudige is gewoon een comment zetten in de Facebook live groep of op het YouTube kanaal, waar jullie deze uitzendingen volgen. Wees AUB bondig in uw formulering en maak je vraag heel erg duidelijk. Heeft u meer ruimte nodig om uw vragen wat uit te leggen, behoeft ze wat meer uitwerking, dan kan u ons ook een mail sturen naar het e-mailadres dat u hieronder ziet. Wij kunnen u dan live in de uitzending vragen waar u rechtstreeks uw vraag kan uitwerken. Let wel, dit wordt opgenomen en blijft achteraf beschikbaar op internet, voor de mensen die vanavond misten. Tout le monde peut intervenir dans sa propre langue. Nous traduirons si nécessaire. Donc, il y a deux manières d'intervenir ce soir dans cette session. Ou bien vous mettez un commentaire ou une question sur notre page Facebook ou encore sur notre chaîne YouTube, là où vous suivez cette émission. Nous y lisons vos questions et nous le proposons à nos invités. On vous demande d'être succinct dans la formulation. Ou encore, si votre remarque ou question demande un peu d'élaboration, on a la possibilité de vous inviter en live ici dans notre conversation. Vous envoyez un mail aux adresses mail que vous voyez ici dessous et vous mentionnez le sujet sur lequel vous voulez intervenir. On a alors l'opportunité de vous inviter ici. Gardez bien à l'esprit que le live stream est enregistré afin que des autres puissent regarder cette session plus tard. After all these interventions, and I hope a very lively debate, we will hope to finish to around 9:45 to be in time for the lockdown in Brussels. Now it is time to listen to the inspiring example of the city of Oslo. In 2009, one single driver died in a traffic accident in Oslo. No pedestrians, children or cyclists at all were killed on the roads last year in the Norwegian capital. This is not just luck or a statistical outlier. Oslo has Vision Zero at the heart of its policies since many years and puts relentless effort in shaping the city to reflect this vision. This is why we are very happy to have here with us Ada Kongsrud, the head of the road safety section of Oslo. She will explain us how this came about. Ada, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome. I feel quite honored to be invited and being able to speak about our work in Oslo. My name is Ida and I'm the unit leader for the road safety section at the Agency for Urban Environment in the city of Oslo. And I will speak about how we work towards Vision Zero. Let's see. This is Oslo, and as we can see in this picture, the city is surrounded by the fjord and forest areas. Buildings dominate a great part of the city land use. Sorry, my sound is a bit off. I hope you can hear me. And it leaves a pretty limited area to roads and the road users. And the challenge here, as well as in many other European cities, is how we can use the available area to accommodate for safe interaction between the different groups of road users. It is a main task for the Municipal Agency for Urban Environment to provide smart road safety solutions that contribute to good quality of life among our citizens so that we can live safe and active lives. Another main goal for the agency is to contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transport. Among other things, this means to increase transportation on foot and bicycle. And this goal needs to be achieved within the limits of the Vision Zero. So is Vision Zero compatible with the aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transport? Pedestrians and bicycle riders are our most vulnerable road users. Moving towards Vision Zero and at the same time increasing transportation by foot and bicycle require that the City of Oslo works actively with road safety measures for these groups in particular. If accidents reducing measures are not carried out and transportation at the same time by walking and cycling increases, as aimed, the number of accidents could potentially rise. So our main goal is requires that we develop an infrastructure where these road user groups can move about safely. This graph shows what you were talking about, Tim, the fatality rate of the road users on foot and bicycle over the last 20 years. We experience a positive trend in fatal road accidents in general, and we are, of course, very pleased to see that no pedestrians or bicycle riders lost their lives in our streets last year. And this result is, of course, not achieved by one measure alone. We believe that the measures made over time and a number of years in a cooperative effort towards the Vision Zero on different levels and in different sectors of our society have contributed to this result. Despite the positive trend and results in 2019, there is a continued need to keep up the work. So far in 2020, we have experienced one accident, a fatal accident involving a pedestrian and at an intersection. And in addition, we've had 2 other fatal accidents involving motor vehicles this year. Still, of course, we are very inspired by the positive trend. We have seen the largest decline of fatalities among car drivers and passengers. And even though we do see reduction of fatalities among pedestrians and bicycle riders as well, the decline up to 2019 has been less steep for these groups of road users. In Oslo, the second most frequent type of road accidents during the recent years is car hitting a pedestrian. And this happens typically at an intersection when the pedestrian is crossing the road. It happens both at zebra crossings and also else occur most often at intersections, typically being hit by a motor vehicle in the meeting lane or by a motor vehicle making a turn in front of the cyclist. Accident with cyclists also tend to be single accidents when no other road users are involved. We believe that there are a number of factors leading to the downward trend of fatal accidents that we experience here in Oslo. One factor is a coordinated strategic planning towards the Vision Zero over time. It is a nationwide effort coordinated by the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, involving public and private organizations in a range of sectors. This systematic effort is based on scientific research, and it is considered to be a major contributor to the downward trend in fatal accidents in Norway as a whole. Then speed is a major factor for the outcome of an accident. And in Oslo, we are working systematically to reduce speed in different ways. Over the last 5 years, we have reduced the speed limits for more than 190 stretches of road. In addition, we have carried out a great number of other speed-reducing measures, such as speed bumps, redesigning intersections, and narrowing the car lane. At the same time, the conditions for walking and cycling is being improved by better infrastructure, cycling paths, and physical separation of different road user groups. The motor traffic is also reduced by measures such as prohibiting motor traffic on certain streets, one-way regulations of streets, charging toll fees, and reducing the number of parking lots. So we'll explain a little about how we work with these accident reducing factors in the city of Oslo in a while. But first, the effort for road safety on a local and regional level, such as in Oslo, is part of this nationally coordinated strategy. For instance, there is an action plan for road safety, which is a 4-year plan on a national level. It is a nationwide effort coordinated by the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, and it involves public and private organizations. I think I talked about this already, didn't I? Sorry. There we are. All the measures in the plan agreed upon, they are based on scientific research, as I said, and each measure is pinpointed to a specific contributor in the plan. The work with a new plan is about to begin next year, and the city of Oslo will be a part of the process alongside other cities and regions. Also, the police and private associations and NGOs will be a part of this, and also relevant state administrations. On a more local level, we have something called the OTU, which is a road safety coalescence of public units and private organizations in Oslo, coordinating shared aims. This is a forum for discussion, sharing knowledge and coordination of measures involving, for instance, the Motorcycle Association, the tramway and metro. Also the police takes part there, and the regional representation of the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, to name some. And this forum aims to achieve the same understanding of road safety challenges in Oslo so that we can all pull towards a common goal within our different areas of work. The Municipal Action Plan for Road Safety, which is currently under development in my own section, will give an overview of the specific challenges in Oslo and identify new challenges and point a direction for prioritizing effective measures for the couple of years to come. There is a high degree of interest, demands and questions concerning road safety generally. We receive instructions from the town hall and several suggestions from the 15 district councils, from schools, parents, citizens in general, and the media. And we consider all the inputs that we receive, working within the limits of regulations, standards, and knowledge, of course, about accidents and risks. Instructions from the city council and the financial means that we have available, trying to make holistic assessment and prioritize within these limits. We continuously work to make improvements, and two of our major focus areas are the traffic conditions in school areas and the infrastructure for pedestrians and bicycle riders. When it comes to planning, my section gives advice in other projects and plan processes in order to maintain road safety concerns early on. Our experience is that it is more effective to get things right from the beginning than to try to fix it later on. In a project, there is often a wide range of considerations that sometimes come into conflict with each other, especially when the area is limited, such as it is in a city. And our section tried to contribute to find solutions that are as good as possible and that sufficiently maintain road safety. In Oslo, we have a clear political signal and planning tools for building infrastructure to prioritize the needs of pedestrians and cyclists above other groups. In our unit, the road safety section, we carry out the smaller permanent physical road safety measures, such as lowering the speed limits, street markings, redesigned intersections, school area projects, and speed bumps. And this year, in 2020, we have carried out more than 120 road safety improvements and smaller projects. And on our website, we've published a map with an overview of them so that citizens can go into the internet and find out what's happening in their neighborhood. And I will give examples of some of them here. Based on what we know about accidents in Oslo involving pedestrians and cyclists, it is especially important to redesign intersections, keeping these groups of road users in mind. And this one example of a redesigned intersection aims at giving vulnerable road users more space by widening the pavement, reducing the speed of cars by narrowing the street lane, and shortening the crossing distance for pedestrians. This particular example is from a street close to school in downtown Oslo. There are also other measures at work at the same time in the area, such as rerouting of motor traffic in streets where motor traffic has been prohibited, or working together to get the kids safely to and from school. And the areas around schools are prioritized in our work with traffic safety measures. In Oslo, most kids walk or cycle on the way to school, especially in downtown areas. And it's the national aim that 80% of all pupils should walk or cycle on their way to school. And the largest cities are closest to meeting this aim. But it is still a challenge that a lot of parents choose to drive their kids to school, which in itself adds to the risk for the children to get to school on foot or bike. So if we really want to improve the road safety conditions around schools, we need to work with and to change the awareness and get parents to act differently. And we are aiming at this in a program that we call Heart Zone. This program is designed in cooperation between public and private organizations, and Oslo has adopted it. In the coming few years, the City of Oslo is aiming at creating a safer road environment around all our elementary schools. What is particularly interesting about this program is the local involvement of the pupils and parents, and it combines working with both awareness and physical road safety measures to reduce motor traffic around schools. The central program group involves the schools at first through contact with the headmaster and the PTA. And when a school agrees to join the project, the task is to identify and describe the local traffic challenges that kids meet on their way to school. We conduct surveys among both parents and pupils, and the kids also physically examine their way to school and report difficulties that they have experienced in the traffic. And based on this input, the program identifies relevant measures for the particular school. The school draws a heart-like shape around the school on a map, and this signifies the heart zone where measures will be put into action. The school is devoted to work actively with awareness about the positive effects of health, environment, and road safety that comes from walking and cycling to school instead of driving a car. And if driving is necessary, parents are encouraged to drop the kids off before entering the heart zone so that the kids can walk the last part to school. The City of Oslo contributes with physical road safety measures inside the heart zone, designed to meet the challenges described in the assessment phase. This program started up last year with 3 schools as pilots, and this year we are involved with 15 new schools. In 2021, we aim at 10 more schools and so on until we reach the goal of heart zones around all approximately 110 or so elementary schools in Oslo. The central program group includes members not only from the Agency for Urban Environment, but also from the Education Agency and the Agency for Planning and Building Services in the City of Oslo. And this cooperation helps to raise awareness about road safety within the City of Oslo's units and strengthen our own ability to consider road safety when planning new building projects. And here is an example of student involvement. Here we see students from a school called Rusta examining their way to school and pointing out places where they have experienced traffical challenges and try to describe them as well as possible for the program group. In order to create awareness of the Heart Zone project, we got the means for a campaign during the back to school period this August. For a couple of weeks, information about Heart Zone was displayed all over town on locations like bus stops and the metro. And in addition, we ran an ad in a newspaper on net. We advertised through podcast and by posts in the social media. We would like it to be attractive for schools to become part of heart zones because it is easier also to get the parents along when they believe in it and also see that other schools are joining in. In the City of Oslo, there is an ongoing bigger project, a building project for infrastructure for cycling. The City Council has decided a plan for a network of bicycle infrastructure back in 2018. In order to get more citizens to opt for bicycle as a means of transportation, the city needs to offer a coherent network for safe cycling. Bicycle riders is a type of hybrid road users group that is forced to share the area, the road lanes with the car drivers and share the pavements with the pedestrians. And this must happen on the terms of the pedestrians. So it limits the effect of transportation. And to increase transportation on foot and bicycle, it is also important that, to feel safe. And even though sharing the areas runs quite smoothly most of the time, it can in some situations seem like a competition and be a source of conflict and risk as well. Separated infrastructure contributes to improved conditions for pedestrians as well as bikers. The network for bicycle infrastructure in Oslo is carried out in collaboration with the Norwegian Public Roads Administration again, and is founded on a thorough assessment of destinations like schools, public transportation stops, and shops and workplaces. And the work is carried out stepwise, where the easiest improvements come in place first, and the more complex facilities come in place more gradually. On the map, the blue signifies the completed work and the red signifies planned work. So we have come a good way, but as you can see, there is still a lot to be done. The section where I work, the road safety section, we give input and advice to projects that the City of Oslo carry out, such as the building of infrastructure for cycling. And this network, as you can see a few pictures from here, will consist of facilities like intersection measures, waiting boxes for cyclists, for instance, in front of the waiting cars that you can see in the picture down to the right, and bicycle lanes on one or both sides of the road, separate bicycle paths, sometimes with separate pavement on the side. Pavement crossings, which are passages for cyclists, as shown in the picture to the left. They contribute to create a coherent network for cycling. Speed reducing measures and signs, guiding signs for bicycle riders in order to find their way around are also part of the infrastructure project. Another major task for my section this autumn has been to inspect a stretch of 10 kilometers of the already established network of bicycle infrastructure to identify need for improvements for road safety. The City of Oslo bicycles is another measure that contributes to reduce motor traffic in downtown areas. This is a public-private collaboration again, where citizens can register themselves as users for fee and get access to transportation downtown without a car. These bicycles here, they are now equipped with studded tires for the coming winter season. So what all these examples show is that the mobility pattern of Oslo is changing gradually from motorized forms of transportation to more environment-friendly solutions. And very often this change is compatible with road safety and public health, but sometimes it proposes new challenges, such as e-scooters. And just today, actually, the Norwegian Public Roads Administration published a public consultation on the new regulation of e-scooters concerning topics from parking and sanctioning to driving under the influence, driving on pavements, age limit, helmet use, zones with user limitations, speed regulation, and also the use of municipal space. So next year, we will hopefully have in place regulation that supports micromobility in a safer manner, both for the users of the e-scooters and for the other road traffic groups around them. Yes. The Agency for Urban Environment is working to establish projects that will give us useful tools to tackle the future. In a program called Smarter Transport in the Oslo region, our agency collaborates with the Norwegian Public Roads Administration and Ruter Public Transport Company to test new forms of transport and acquire new insight in technology in close dialogue with citizens and private companies. And in this program, we are about to test a new type of speed bump that has been tested successfully in Sweden. Because there is a challenge that Oslo, to a large extent, is built on a ground of mud, really. And traditional speed bumps can cause vibratory motions that may, in some cases, damage buildings. Traditional speed bumps may also give buses and fire engines a hard time. And that is why we participate in this pilot for smarter speed reduction. The citizens in a particular area in Oslo, they regret to see that we had to remove this a regular speed bump close to the local school due to tremors in the ground that shook the buildings around. And the citizens were involved and welcomed this pilot for smarter speed reduction. We were all, of course, hoping that it would not cause a tremor effect. And it was built last week, but sadly, the first reports were not positive. And it seems that we will have to move this speed bump and put it somewhere else in order to get to observe how it works in the coming year. Hopefully, it will improve the conditions for heavier fire engines. What is great about this Smarter Transport program, though, is that there is room to test and to fail, and the basic knowledge acknowledgement that we also learn from failing. So our tasks depend a great deal on the weather here up north, and the building season is now closing. Winter is coming, as they say, and the coming winter months, we will, in our section, make priorities for next season that starts approximately with March. We receive a great challenges concerning road safety. And we will consider all of the inputs that we get in a holistic point of view and make inspections and make priorities within the limits of our budget to work out a list of prioritized measures for 2021. Of course, we already know that we cannot meet the expectations of all citizens, and we are sure that some will be disappointed. Naturally, the threshold for contacting us is usually much higher for citizens that are content with our effort than for the citizens who want to point out needs for improvement. But that is why it is extra nice to hear from a mother calling us to say that the redesigned intersection close to the local kindergarten is the talk among the parents because they feel much safer after the improvements were made. So happy ending there to what I'd planned to say. And I hope the sound has been working well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ida. We had a few hiccups 2 times, but I think we got, I think we only lost like half a minute at one point and 10 seconds at another point. So I think we clearly got a message. And I see in Facebook already some people are very inspired by what you have been saying. So I'm really looking forward to what our experts and the people that we have here in the studio, the virtual studio with us, what they are thinking about it. I will first give the floor to Roel de Kleen, who is now working as an expert on traffic safety at Ouders Verongelukte Kinderen. So but he formerly was also in the Cycling Association, and he has also an organization himself who promotes cycling in Brussels. So I'm eager to hear his comments and his questions for you.
Thank you, Tim. I think what the big difference between Brussels and Oslo is that Oslo is doing the things that we are talking about for years now. They work with the coordinated planning, they reduce speed traffic, they reduce traffic in general, they build infrastructure instead of this arguing about what kind of infrastructure is the best and that. Nice to hear and that was I forgot almost, is the charging toll they have already for a few years. So that's one thing that's a big issue now. Oslo has done it and the results are there. Also for road safety, Important also to notice is that it's not in Belgium. We need it very. We need it soon. I hope the new government will do it. Is a multi-annual plan from the federal government, not only from the city, but also on a higher level, and that is a big. It isn't here in Belgium, and that's a shame. That's a big shame. I hope the new federal government will take that in hands and they make a plan, and that the city of Brussels or the region, the capital region of Brussels, can fit in, because here that's what we need too. And then one important thing I noticed was I think I understand well. She didn't talk about police enforcement, and that's important to know, because here we'll always we need more enforcement, more more controls. I think a city that's working good don't need enforcement. Enforcement is the last thing we have to do, and here in Brussels and in Belgium in general, it's the first thing we do. We only do enforcement, but we forget about sensibilization, about awareness, about reducing traffic, about reducing speed. And also it's important to know that police enforcement is important, but only as the stick behind, not as the stick leading out. So that's one thing we all have to take into consideration. Now, talking about police enforcement, I have one first question is about, don't you have street racing in Oslo, and what are you doing about it? I don't hope I'm stealing from someone else's questions, but street racing, road cowboys is a big problem in Brussels. So that's my first question. How do you handle that? And then in general, I've got two questions in general. More the questions that seems important. So what do you think is the most important measure you took in the past, and what will be the most important measure you will take in the future, if it is possible to define one measure, of course, because as we all know, it has to do with coordination of all kind of measures to have a good safety policy. Okay, I thank you.
Thank you, Roel. I guess well, I give the floor to Ida. I think there was maybe also a question about policy enforcement. You didn't put it as a question, but as a remark. But maybe Ida can say something about it. And then a very specific question about street racing, and one more generic about most important measures being taken into place and still need to be put into place.
Yes, I didn't speak about sanctioning, mainly because it is a police matter, and the Agency for Urban Environment cannot sanction, for instance, speeding. The only thing we sanction is incorrect parking. But we, in addition, I would like to say that we try to strive towards forming the infrastructure so that it rather invites the road users to comply with the regulations. For instance, when we design the roads and intersection, the aim, at least, is not perfect everywhere, I can assure you, but the aim at least is to design them in a way such that the speed limit that we put there feels correct for the car user. And when it comes to speeding, of course, we do have speeding in Oslo, and often we could wish for more police controls, definitely in some areas. The street racing phenomenon that you talked about, I'm not so sure about is really a problem in Oslo, but perhaps in more rural areas that occurs. But it's not. Youths in more rural districts are more into cars and motoring really, and perhaps can arrange racings, but it's not of the biggest problems that we have in Oslo, really. And to the question about what we well, the best measure. I think that it is impossible to choose one. I mean, we have our tool case, and we have, of course, limited variations of tools to choose from. But I think that the national direction towards Vision Zero is sort of the base and the fundament that we build our work in Oslo and in other cities in Norway as well upon, because it's nationwide agreed upon that the Vision Zero is what counts and what we are working towards, and that is a very inspiring vision to work towards, and inspiring also that we all agree upon it, that is our aim. Yes, and I also think that it is important to make individual assessments before putting a measure into action, because one measure might work in one place, but may not work so well in another. So to assess the situation and analyze the traffic situation where the problem occurs is, of course, basic to find the right measure, at least. I hope I answered some of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ida. Roel, do you have anything to add, or I will otherwise give the floor to Jesse? Roel?
No, I'm fine. Thanks for the answers.
Okay. Then, Jesse, I give the floor to you. You are working at the MOBI department of Vrije Universiteit Brussels. You're doing PhD on the supervision of Dr. Imre Kesure and Professor Kati Macharis. So sustainable mobility is your thing. So I'm very eager to hear your comments, your ideas about this, and maybe also your questions. The floor is yours, Jesse.
Thanks. So first, Ida, thanks for the presentation. It was amazing to see how Oslo is regulated in terms of traffic safety, and also very inspiring to see how Brussels maybe one day in the future could also look like. What struck me most from your presentation is that you mentioned the word cooperation so many times. So cooperative effort, including NGOs, including citizens. There was cooperation between departments within the government. And I think that's very much, no, actually it's not lacking in Brussels. I think in Brussels we have too much cooperation, because for mobility policy, for example, we have 19 mayors in Brussels, 19 aldermen of mobility, 6 police zones, and 1 regional minister of mobility. And that's just too many people around the same table, and this causes a lot of delays and frustrations, because if one person doesn't agree with something, then the whole scheme comes to an end, and usually not much changes. In Brussels, we're now talking about the same things as you discussed in your presentation. We're talking about toll, we're talking about parking policy, making people pay to park. In my neighborhood, you pay 28 euros a year to park your car on the street. We're also talking about one-way streets. And all of these things are very, very controversial. The minister who proposes these kind of things is receiving threats, sometimes even death threats. Citizens who vocally and openly say that they support these measures, they get death threats. There is a very small minority, I think, but in a very, very vocal minority that is against any change that would somehow impede their usual way of life, driving from A to B, even though it's a walkable distance. In your presentation, you focus very much on the infrastructure. But what I would like to ask you, if you could say a bit more about the people side of the policy, because I cannot imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, that everyone in Oslo was applauding all of these measures, that they said, toll, yes, I want to pay more, that instead of a two-way street, we'll have a one-way street, that they had to pay for parking. All of these things must have caused some controversy. So I'm wondering, how is the public involved in this type of decision-making? And especially, and And following on that, how is dealt with opponents?
Yes.
Yes, I'll give the floor to you, Ida, because I like the question, because I also like the way you put it in your presentation, that there are people asking for improvement are much more heard than people who are happy. So I thought that was a very polite way to say it, but I think it's a very interesting question to see how to deal with people opposing or conflict. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, of course we do have discussions in Oslo as well, and it's a bit too easy maybe to come across now as seemingly it's a perfect city, which of course we have a lot of challenges here as well. The discussion and the debate goes on, of course, in the media and when people contact us or the politicians. And the local government does have a lot of opposition, both among citizens and fellow politicians in the city council, of course, who disagree with the environmental line that they have chosen for their period, of course. And I guess one response is we'll see how the next election goes when the people cast their ballot in the ballot box, whether they have been happy or not. But the local government that we have now are on their second period now, so that must be some sign at least that more or less some people also are happy about about the politics. But when we introduce lower speed in some areas, the typical thing is that most people, they want a speed limit of 30 kilometers maximum outside their own home, but they want to be able to drive in 80 kilometers on their way to work or wherever they are going. So I think we are all in different situations in our lives where we feel that speed reduction is okay, and in other situations we feel that it is a hassle for us when we strive to make wherever we are going. So we do feel the disagreement with our work a lot of the time. We do get a lot of complaints that we have to answer, and but that is why also I did like to finish my presentation by also putting forward a positive response, because I do believe that it is easier to respond when you disagree than to make contact to say something positive. So I believe that it's a good mix in Oslo as well as in Brussels, and there are always a lot of local papers writing and are upon us, of course, as they should be. so that we have to answer every day about the work that we do, why we are doing it, what regulations and standards we have to carry out the measures within, and so on. So we definitely all the time we are answering out those types of questions. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ida. Jesse, you want to have you have anything to add?
No, thank you very much for your answer, I think.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll give the word now to Boussauw, who's professor at Cosmopolis Research Center in the group in Brussels, and who I happen to know had a first PhD promotion this afternoon, so he's in a festive mood, I guess. But he's also very much occupied with urban mobility and urban development. So I'm very well. I hope to. Well, I'm looking forward to his questions and his remarks.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ida. Very interesting presentation. I learned a lot. I have Actually, I have many questions, but I will start with, with just one. Since you referred many times to rebuilding road space, rebuilding public space, investing in slowing down or rebuilding the environment and in anticipating a speed reduction. And so, yeah, I have the impression that it costs like lots of money. And so my question is, if we would allocate the same amount of funds towards rebuilding road infrastructure in Brussels, would this be the key to the solution, or is it more complicated? And then the second question is, of course, who is paying for this? Is it like a self-funding scheme in the sense that the road tolls are partly paying for this, or is this mainly funded by like general means, tax revenues? Well, that's my first question.
Yes. Well, I don't know Brussels the way that I know Oslo, unfortunately, but I'm sure, of course, that Brussels is a much larger city than Oslo, and it will take it's a greater task, I guess, to move forward in such a great city. Of course, we in our section we deal with the smaller improvements in my section, the road safety section, and in addition we give advice to other bigger projects, but it costs definitely. Both the smaller and the bigger project costs a lot of money, and generally the general tax means is the funding section. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a second, maybe a third question, Tim?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Put them. If you well, take them together, and then I'll give the floor to Ida directly too.
Well, okay. The other question I had is actually a bit in line with the question Roel was asking about enforcement. Well, I know this is not really your competence, but still, I wonder to what extent we could talk about like a culture of road safety awareness in Oslo that might differ from what is at stake in Brussels. And of course, this is not something that is like genetic or people are born with this. But I wonder, could you say something about? I mean, is it a matter of like educating children or educating young drivers? Is there like a road safety awareness culture you can build, in your opinion?
Absolutely, I do think it's a culture that needs to develop, and I think I have an impression that the Scandinavian countries, at least Norway and Sweden, we are very focused on safety in general, and there might be a million reasons for that. And safety in general is such a big question. And now we talk about road safety, of course, but road safety is a focus area in schools early on from kindergarten level, and in the teaching in schools. It is a mandatory part to also talk about road safety and traffic. And we also have organizations like Trygg Trafikk who contribute to with material for schools that they can get online, for instance, in order to teach road safety to the kids. And teaching kids to ride a bike is usually one of the things that they focus on at school as well. So you do get a lot of reflections around road safety early on. I believe so. And when you grow up and are about to get your driver's license, there is it has been developed the national curriculum for the getting the driving license has also been developed in a direction that where we want to get these youths to reflect upon their own willingness to take risks and sort of get to know themselves a bit better, so that they are prepared and understand the consequences, and also when before they get to drive alone, of course, they can drive with their parents, so they can also, in addition to get taught by a driving instructor, they can practice for a long while with their parents, and they are we actually want them to the ideal is that they practice for nearly 2 years before they get their driving license. Of course, not everyone does this, but there is a lot of focus on kids before getting their license, that they get it in a safe manner, because we all care about our young ones, and a lot of parents go to a meeting at the local the national the Norwegian Public Roads Administration have local offices where they can go and get information before they start practicing as well. So I think from early on up to you become a grown up, you do get to reflect upon how to act responsibly in traffic. Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. Tim, I might have a third question. I don't know, is there time for it?
Maybe if it's a short one, because we still have Hannah to go, and there's also quite a lot of questions from the audience. So I don't know, does it need a
okay, but then I can leave it there, and if there would be any time left in the end, we
yes,
could.
I think that's
come back.
better.
Okay.
I will now give the floor to Hannah Mangelschots, who is working at AWB and also involved in Filter Café Filtré. And as an architect, she has, I think, a lot of experience in public space and design and so on. So I think her questions will be in that direction, I guess.
I will try. Just as the others, I really liked your presentation. Thought it was extremely interesting, especially also the focus that you put, or the attention that went to the school areas, maybe as points of where naturally a community gathers or exists, and how these schools, the way you mentioned that there are 110 elementary schools in Oslo, and so if we tackle 10 areas this year and 10 areas next year and so on. So we really set up a sort of program, and by focusing on these schools as well, a specific focus area, one by one, you start to tackle the whole city. You start building a whole network. And I think this is something that that Filter Café Filtré Atelier shares as a point of view. What's interesting here, I don't know if that also exists in Oslo, is that actually, and maybe it's also connected to the complexity existing in Brussels, which causes it to sometimes be a bit slow on the political or the policy level. What happened in Brussels is that actually parents or citizens came or started protesting or coming on the streets for better air quality. And so the first move came from these citizens, and there was really a clear demand from these citizens on towards politicians or other policy levels. And I think that also allowed for another type of collaboration, which is now being tested, you could say, where really citizens and parents and really user groups of these areas are involved in a completely different way in the design process, or even in the building process, or in the maintenance process. And I think that's important also to see, as you mentioned, it's actually the parents who are also the ones who bring their parents to school, their children to school by car, if they feel like areas are not safe. If you can involve them in a completely different way, it's a completely different type of behavioral change that you can cause. Another, or one of the things I wondered concerning the hard zones is in what sense the measures you speak about are really structural. So that's because that's something we really struggle with, that the school streets that we are now working on and that are popping up all over Brussels, but also in different cities in Belgium, that they're mostly considered as blocking a street half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening when kids arrive or leave their school, while actually to really have an impact not only on road safety but also on other levels, on the air quality, or to make space for measures for climate adaptation. Actually, you really need structural measures, really need also infrastructural measures, and really redesigning the street, which could also allow for tackling different challenges at the same time. So maybe that's my question. Is this something that you already do? Because it requires an immense, complex process to really work together between departments. But do you already link measures concerning road safety to other measures, really redesigning streets in terms of climate adaptation, in terms of different types of mobility, maybe even at a moment when streets are redesigned for completely different reasons, such as implementing a heat network for the energy transitions? Is this a moment where also measures concerning road safety can be implemented and involved?
Yes, I do believe that that both road safety and public health and environmental aims often go hand in hand. Sometimes, of course, they are in conflict, but very, very, very often they go hand in hand and work together. And the thing about hard zones is that, of course, when the main aim for my section is definitely road safety. But in this program, it is also an explicit aim to get the kids to cycle and walk to school in the bigger picture, so that they will also get good health, and so that we will also reduce car and also pollution. So this is actually expressed in the aims in this program. So this is perhaps the best example I have where these things are so well expressed together, and where they work so well together. And of course, it is a long-term project, and we have we get, as I said, fundings each year, and we have an amount of funds to spend on this, and we rather than give a flat amount to each school, we try, as I said, to work with each individual school, and to assess what is the problem in this particular school, and find the correct measures to put in place here. And a big task in this project is to get the schools and the parents to understand that a lot depend on them. So now we are still in the beginning of this program, because it's a long-term program. And we are starting by sort of picking the schools where we one criterion at least is to pick a school where there is where the parents are involved or seem most involved, because then it is much easier to work with the aim of of changing their behavior and getting fewer people to drive. And also it is a variation, of course, between the center-based schools and the schools in the suburban areas, because they will have probably different needs and there will be different tools that we can put in place. For instance, the central schools, not a lot of people drive to the center schools compared to the suburban schools. So a good measure for a suburban school might be to establish a drop-off zone outside the heart zone. But in a city center school, this would be this wouldn't be a good idea, because that would actually encourage people to drive to school. So we have to treat them individually to find the best working measures. Yeah. I hope I answered some of your questions there.
I think so, yes.
It was really interesting to hear your ideas as well.
Thank you, Hanne. Thank you, all our experts. I will give you a final word at the end of this evening, but now I think it's time to go to our audience. I see that there's quite a lot of questions that have been coming in. I think most of them are addressed to Ida. So I will take a first one from Renate van Hoof on Facebook. Who asks Ida if there are any plans to start using intelligent speed adaptation systems in Oslo or in Norway. Is this something that is on the agenda?
Yeah, intelligent speed adaptations in cars. Here we actually follow Brussels, because the legislations come from the EU. So Norwegian law generally follow the EU law on this matter.
Mm-hmm. So you're not planning like to become one of the first pilot project or something in this regards?
It's a good idea. I'll make a note of it.
Well, we try to push Brussels to do that as well. So I hope there will be competition between you and us.
Yeah, I would be glad to see that.
Yeah, good. There's a second question from Peter Vannes. He says that what strikes him is the pictures on how bollard-free the sideways are in Oslo. How do you handle people parking or driving on them?
The bollard-free sideways. Can I ask, is that the pavements or?
Yes.
Yes. Well, of course, we do get reports some places where the streets are very narrow and the height of the curb is low. That's people also here try to park and drive on the side of the road. And of course, when it comes to parking, we do have a chance to respond by sanctioning. But otherwise, again, it is a police matter to sanction and to carry out controls. So I wouldn't say it's the biggest problem. I don't have any counted registrations of it. But again, when working with infrastructure, heightening the curbs of the pavements is, of course, one effective measures to prevent this, that they drive up on the pavement.
Well, I guess that we in Brussels have the experience that that's not enough, that we have to put a lot of infrastructure just to prevent people driving on them. So I think we have a long way to go there. Another question from Gideon Boye. In Brussels, we need a pandemic for immediate redistribution of public space. Example, organizing corona cycle paths on major urban roads. The political consensus about Vision Zero was clearly not strong enough to push for safe road infrastructure. How did Oslo manage to translate this vision into action?
Well, of course, Oslo still has a long way to go as well. We haven't reached all the aims, I'm sure, but it is interesting to see that the corona effect has reached us too, of course. And during corona, we have actually experienced a distinct increase in cyclists, and we have automatic counters installed on different places all over town, and they indicate that we've had a 54% increase this autumn of cyclists compared to the same time in 2019. And I think the increase in November of people cycling were actually 73% registered. So, and this has actually happened without fatal injuries among the cyclists. So maybe there is some sort of safety in numbers working here. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Next question is a question from Tine Koreman. How was a culture of cooperation between different sectors, government entities, and civil society brought to maturity? I guess it's a question about you talked about working together, bringing this forum of actors getting noses in the same direction. I think some elaboration on that.
Well, if you go back in time, of course, the picture was dreadful, and in 1970, I think, was the nationally the worst year in fatal road accidents, and of course it takes a really long time to change things, and private organizations such as Trygg Trafikk here in Norway have lobbied, of course, for a very long time. They have also focused a lot of bringing up children, as we talked about earlier, to being aware of road safety issues. And previously, it was the mother's job in a way to keep the children away from traffic, but now we think differently. We've
Sorry, you're away.
come to a point where we.
Sorry, that you were away for just a few seconds. Maybe retake the sentence.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. The mother's job to take and that you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. From like the worst years in the 1970s up to 2020, there has been a slow progression, you might say, towards where we are now, and we still have, of course, a lot of work to do. But the thinking that the streets were made mainly for the cars, and that you had to keep watch the kids and keep the kids away, and having the mothers to follow them all around. We've tried to, or we have, I think, managed to come away from that sort of thinking then, and progressing towards the thinking where the road and the city environment is for all of us, and mainly for the more vulnerable users, because we are now both politically and in our standards expected to prioritize these groups above the car users. So in this thinking, when we build, we are actually forced to think that we build first and foremost for pedestrians, then for the cyclists, then for public transportation, and the cars come at the bottom of this hierarchy. So and this has been I don't quite know what you heard what I said before, but of course it has been brought about both by research and knowledge, political will, and also the contribution of private organizations, and by working with kids in school to raise awareness about road safety. So it's it has took a long time, but and we are still in progression. But it's a challenge that we have to work with still.
Yes, I will take a question from Emerik Schaverbeke, who has, in fact, well, it belongs a bit on what you have been saying. It's a quite difficult question for you, I guess, but he asks, with what you know about Brussels today, how far back in time would you roughly position Oslo comparable with the current situation here in Brussels? So he wants to know, is there where are we at your time frame, and give us some hope. Where are we there? Are we approaching where you are now?
I'm sorry to say that I don't know Brussels well enough to venture into that kind of assessment of your wonderful town, I'm sure. And I'm also sure that things are happening in Brussels that we could learn a lot from also. So yes, no, I think I will just have to say that I'm sorry to say that I don't know your city well enough to say anything about that.
Yes, I guess that's also a debate that we will have to have in Brussels, and when we are going to the final sections of what we are doing with the Ander Atelier, the L'autre Atelier, to go for a horizon atelier to see where we can go with Brussels. I think that can be part of the exercise, to situate ourselves and see what we need to do to go forwards. Another question from Bruno Verrekels. He asks if there is a specific design impact of geography of the slopes, for example, or of long dark days in terms of visibility, which are worth to mention for Brussels. So does that play a role in the way you design the city, or you take your measures and so on?
Well, yes, this is perhaps not my areas of expertise, but of course we up north we have long dark periods during the winter, so street lighting is of course also considered to be a road safety measure, and very often when we go out and fix intersections, we also check to see whether the lighting could be improved, because visibility, of course, is adamant in order to be aware that there are vulnerable road users there. So yeah, I would say that street lamps definitely is a road safety measure.
And in terms of slopes, because that is also something that is often said in Brussels. Brussels is a hilly city, and you cannot, well, cycling is difficult and so on. Is that something that is considered in Oslo, or is it something that you have special things about?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the expert to express anything about street lighting concerning slopes and differences in heights. So I may have to come back on that one, if that's okay.
Okay, fine enough. I think I have another question here from Emily Hersens. How do you approach the problem of safety beyond the measure, like wearing helmets, using reflectors, without using a polarization vulnerable users towards strong users? So I guess this question is people who are biking easy and have not difficulties to bike.
Yeah. Well, of course, the city of Oslo wants to encourage people to use their bikes, and that would be very difficult aim to reach if we scared them from using their bikes. So, when we talk about helmet use in relation to road safety, we try to do it in a positive way. Instead of scaring them off getting on their bikes, we rather try to mention it as a positive encouragement in our communication, as a positive reminder that wear a helmet, or at the end of perhaps a communication about bikes. Yeah, but if we take the bigger perspective, of course, it is better for the public health that we use our bikes instead of our cars. So if you look at the big picture, it is safer all around using bikes if more people were to cycle. So definitely we try to communicate using helmets without scaring people from cycling.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I see any more questions on Facebook for the moment. Maybe I have one more question for you, and that was about you said that you were doing public consultations, for example, on the regulation of e-scooters, but also on the speed bumps. This kind of public consultation, how far does it go? Is it about only getting the input from the people, or is there also like really involvement in the design of the regulations? At what level do the people have a say in how you will now treat the e-scooter infrastructure in Oslo?
Yeah, the public consultation is carried out by the Norwegian Public Roads Association. So that's the consultation that we will respond to when we received it today. So I have still not been able to read it through. But here we have the role of responding actually to the suggestions in the consultation. And we are not the ones putting out the consultations. But of course, we will have a look at it and reflect upon it and give our opinion about it to the Norwegian Public Roads Administration. And then they will collect, of course, this is an open hearing so that everyone can respond to it, and they will put all the responses together and formulate the new legislation based on this consultation. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not that you go like to a decision-making process with the public, so it's like more kind of input.
Yeah, well, I think perhaps what I was talking about was that we get a lot of input from both from individual citizens, and also we collect input from the different districts, because you know when you live somewhere, and if you're a local politician in a district, you tend to know quite well what the challenges are, and perhaps the biggest one, what are the most important challenges. So it's difficult for us centrally to have the big overview. So we need that input to sort of as a first qualification, if you will, before we can consider each challenge individually, assess which measure would be useful, and also prioritize within the means of our budget. So I think maybe that was what I was talking about.
Okay, thank you. I see there's one more question that came in on Facebook from Tine Koremans. It's what were the first actions of transformation that kickstarted the transformation of the Oslo mobility system? In which spaces did the synergy between political will, knowledge, and civil society land first? It's quite a big
Yes,
question.
that's a big question. And yes, I'm sure it was before my time. But of course, when I started working with road safety, the Vision Zero was already introduced, and this was around 2011, actually, when I was introduced to this road safety work. So already there we were striving toward the bigger goal, you might say, and already then the different sectors in our society were involved. It's hard to pinpoint a moment, obviously, but it's the process of things, and everything has to start someplace. But yes, to go from one way of thinking and to reach a new way of thinking takes a lot of time and effort. So yeah. It's difficult to pinpoint one particular moment in time, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think you're right there, and I hope we are in Brussels at this kind of momentum for the moment. I don't see any more questions from the audience, unless I'm wrong. So I would like to ask for Brussels panelists here to have like their final reflection on what they heard today, what the presentation, but also the discussion afterwards. So no questions, but just what do you take away from this evening? Where do we need to go, having heard this from Oslo? I'll go in the same order. I start with Roel de Kleen.
The most important lesson is, of course, that is road safety is work for years, and that brings me to the question of Emmerich. That I think we are like 25 years behind Oslo, since they started in the mid-70s to work on road safety, and we only start like in the year 2000 or something like that. But on the other hand, the good thing, that's a bad news, of course, 25 years delay. But on the other hand, when you like in cycling races, when you're behind, you can easier, faster get to get ahead. So I think if we do real effort, in 10 years we can achieve the same level as Oslo. But then we have to start now. Recently, the last 2 or 3 years, we see some changes like bicycle paths on the Petit Ceinture and all. So I think if we really work hard, in 10 years we can achieve the level of Oslo. But on the other hand, Oslo in 10 years will be ahead again some years. So it will be an achtervolging, race behind for years. But I think if we continue to work like this, we can achieve the level in 10 years.
Thank you, Roel. Maybe the competition for the assisted speed thing in cars might start
help
us chasing up Oslo, among others. I give now the word to Jesse. Your final reflections.
Yeah. So again, what I said before, I think that the cooperation aspect is very important here. I think in Brussels, it's the citizens guiding the politicians towards Vision Zero, whereas I feel in Oslo it's the opposite. It's the politicians guiding the citizens towards Vision Zero. But the cooperation between the citizens and the government has to be there, and there has to be a willingness to listen to the different sides of the argument. I think maybe one thing that we haven't discussed is the wealth in Norway, which makes things probably a bit easier to implement if you have more money. I just quickly looked it up, and a person in Norway is 18% more, 80% wealthier than a person in Belgium, and I assume that also translates into the budget of the government. What I think is very important when you want to convince people here in Brussels or elsewhere that using, for example, the street to not park cars, but to have children play in, you need to have examples. These examples need to be visual. So I think in that sense, Oslo can serve as a very good example for Brussels, because we can use those visuals to convince politicians, to convince citizens, and not even only visual examples, but also just data on what happens when you implement the toll, the discussion we're having now. What we know is that when you implement the toll, the traffic will go down, which will usually increase the traffic safety. So like Roel said, we're behind quite a few years, but it's also sometimes an advantage, so we don't have to make the same mistakes as have maybe been made in Norway.
Thank you, Jesse. Kobe, your final remarks?
Yes, thank you, Tim. What I take home in terms of infrastructure and rebuilding road space, I think what is important that is that we should know that also small interventions matter. that not everything needs to be costly. Second, that there needs to be room for experiment and even failure. And third, that interventions need to be monitored and that interventions actually need to be steered by scientific research that needs to provide a basis for the decisions that will be made. And then when it comes to, let's say, road safety awareness, I think we need to work on indeed building like a road safety awareness culture. And this is something where I feel that Belgium is really lagging behind compared to Norway. That are my points, I think.
Thank you, Kobe. And Hannah, I give you the final word for as your point, your remarks.
What I take away from this evening is that in Brussels we also need a structural program where we look at the street or the school area as a project area, so the local level, and that together they can add up to an urban network strategy, and that there's an advantage in having this multitude of projects, but we need to develop a specific tool set so that we can apply it to different types of conditions that we will encounter. But in general, have these projects also learn from each other. So I hope that in Brussels we can copy the example of Oslo and really work towards a program of school and other streets that are rethought entirely, integrally.
Thank you, Hannah. So I hear a lot of optimistic voices here in Brussels, a lot of takeaway messages, which we as the Autre Atelier, Ander Atelier will take on the following sessions when we go for Horizon Atelier, but which we will also take when we talk with the Brussels administration tomorrow. For example, there's a new session for developing the new safety measures plan. So we'll the lecture we did from Paris last week will pass there tomorrow. So we have we hope to inspire also our policymakers, our administrations to get to the level where Oslo is now. I think I still need to thank Ida as a special guest for tonight as Oslo for the inspiring talk and the example that Oslo sets for us. So and the way she explained it to us was really enthusiasmating and makes us eager to get there. And then I want to thank our four panelists, Hanne, Roel, Kobe and Jesse, for their reflections, their thoughts. Laatste woord ook voor jullie, het publiek. Bedankt om hier bij ons te zijn. Bedankt voor jullie vele vragen in Facebook. Merci pour toutes ces questions à Facebook. C'était vraiment chouette de voir ça. Comment aussi discussion, on n'a pas mis toute la discussion qui a lieu là aussi, parce que c'est pas seulement des questions, il y a aussi des gens qui reflètent, qui ont des idées. Et donc, c'est vraiment chouette de voir ça, comment ça vit. Ik nodig jullie uit ook voor volgende week, waar dat Berlijn onze gaststad zal zijn, waar dat wij zullen leren over de laatste aanpassingen die daar gebeurd zijn in de coronatijden, met de corona-bike lanes, maar ook over het fietsbeleid dat Berlijn al sinds een heel aantal jaren op poten heeft gezet. Dus donc la semaine prochaine, on aura une session sur Berlin, où on va apprendre sur les Corona Bike Lanes, donc les pistes cyclables mises en place dernièrement pendant la pandémie, mais aussi qui font partie d'une politique plus globale sur pour améliorer les conditions pour les cyclistes à Berlin. Ik dank jullie allemaal. Goedenavond, bonsoir en à la semaine prochaine. Merci.